Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Breaking Bad Habits, with career coach and UCLA alumna, Sami Toussi. My name is Joseph Blancas, and I serve as an Associate Director for Alumni Career Engagement at UCLA Alumni Affairs. In today's program, we will discuss the science of getting rid of bad habits and making positive changes that will stick. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Alumni Association sustaining donors. It's with your help that we are able to strengthen the Bruin community with career programs like this. For some general webinar housekeeping, we will have time at the end of our program for a Q&A with Sami, so please use the Q&A function below to submit your questions. We will also be recording the event and we'll send it out when the recording is available. Now, to start our program, I'm excited to introduce Sami Toussi. Sami is a board-certified coach and owner of Toussi International, a consultancy that helps individuals tap into their purpose to benefit the world. Sami's company encompasses more than 10 years of business and psychology experience, coaching new and existing founders and professionals on balance, growth strategy, and leadership. As the founder of Toussi International, she has coached leaders in organizations such as the EU Commission, Blue Cross, Mars, Netflix, Uber, and Disney. To date, Sami has run over 70 workshops worldwide at companies including WeWork and ZipRecruiter, and has coached over 400 clients on topics focused on career building, leadership, time management, and work-life balance. I'll turn it over to Sami to start our program. Sami?
Wonderful. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you for being here, Sami.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm so excited to be here with you today. This is my second webinar with UCLA Alumni, Alum 2011. And today we're going to be looking at how to break bad habits for good through my 4-step process. Now, before we do get started, I want to make sure that everyone has a fillable habits workbook that will run through the 3rd phase. So if you don't, send a note in the chat and Gloria will go ahead and share a link with you. Great. So I was also told that this is the largest amount of signups UCLA alumni has had for this webinar this year. So I wanted to do a little giveaway. So you can snap a picture of the webinar and tag @Sami Toussi, which is my business handle, and win a free one-on-one coaching session and the Power of Habit book, in which we'll be referencing a lot within this session today. So first, we're going to run through how do you define a habit. Then we look at the key ingredients of habit formation through the science behind the habits, and then breaking bad habits through what I call the ERP method. So this is first looking at identify, which is bringing awareness to the habits that you want to break, reflecting on when and why these behaviors might be taking place, and then planning. So thinking about exactly what habit you want to replace with a different one. And then last, the 4th step is what I call the 4 S's, the 7 sticking success steps. So committing to breaking the old habit. So first, we need to look at what is a habit. So essentially, habits are your brain's version of autopilot. A habit is a routine of behavior that is repeated regularly and tends to occur subconsciously. So research suggested in the past that it takes about 21 days to create a habit. It really takes anywhere between 18 to 254 days with an average of 66. Now that 18 to 264 is dependent on the individual, the behavior, and the circumstance of the habit. Now, according to Charles Duhigg, the author of The Power of Habit, he says approximately 40 to 45% of our actions are habits. So that means you don't consciously initiate or plan out nearly half of what you do every day. Unfortunately, some unconscious actions that we have are just not healthy. So let's explore what some of these bad habits are. Here are the top 10 bad habits that Americans want to kick. This is everything from smoking to eating too much junk food to not exercising enough drinking too much, overspending with money that we don't have and are wanting to save, staying up late. Most Americans feel like they don't get enough sleep, watching too much TV, overusing the smartphone, nail biting, and last but not least, worrying, which is part of a habit loop. The top habits I see within my own clients are everything from not exercising enough to staying up late, overusing their phone, and worrying. And according to a report by the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, bad habits, particularly smoking, sedentary behavior, and just poor eating habits, have led the cause of premature death worldwide. And overall, while not all of these habits may resonate with you, but I'm sure one or two do, I know for me that they do. These are just things that are not supporting our growth, right? They're actions and activities, behaviors that we tend to fall into that are not ourselves. Instinctually, there's just things that we don't like about ourselves. Yet, why are they so hard to break? First, we need to look at how a habit forms. So think about when you first learned how to ride a bike. You learned how to balance, turn, pedal. All of this happened within the prefrontal cortex. So this is where complex thought takes place. It's the part of your brain that's triggered when you first begin to learn a complex task. But after you ride a bike enough, right, you don't have to think consciously of riding. It becomes a habit, which is then tapped into another part of your brain, which is the basal ganglia. The basal ganglia releases chemicals that prevent the complex thought thinking part of your brain for that specific task. This is your brain being efficient by turning down your brain's thinking requirements for bike riding or something like driving, so that you have more space to think about things that are more important in life, like what does my dog like to dream about? To understand how we create habits, we also need to look at what's called the habit loop. So habits are broken down into three key ingredients. First, the trigger. The trigger kicks the brain into automatic mode, which tells it which habit to use. So say, for example, your alarm clock goes off. That is the trigger. That's the cue. The behavior is the physical, mental, or emotional response. Alarm clock goes off, you shut down that alarm clock immediately. The reward is your prize, telling your brain that this loop is worth remembering in the future because it feels good. The reward here is you turn off your alarm and you get an extra 10 minutes of sleep. It's a win. Another example is social media. So you're on social media, which is the trigger. The behavior is your brain switches off and you get to scroll through your feed, sometimes for hours, bombarding your senses with information. And the reward is your brain gets to release a big fat wad of dopamine. Dopamine is the feel-good hormone. Parts of our brain produce dopamine because when something unpleasant is happening, your brain wants it to stop. So for example, when you're stressed at work, your brain looks for a feel-good habit, whether that's snacking or whether that's going through your phone or doing something that can distract you. But these habits happen when you're not even aware of them. So bad habits give us this instant gratification, but move us further away from our goals. So how do we break bad habits? The first step is to shed awareness to what these bad habits are. So in the fillable workbook that you have, that first page is to identify your bad habits. So what I want everyone to do is take about 3 minutes to write out all the bad habits that you can think about. And then once you've brain dumped, reflect on the top 2 bad habits that you plan on breaking today. Now, I know we are all going to have more than 2, but I encourage you to only focus on the most important, the ones that are going to make the biggest difference in your life, right? These could include obsessive social networking, poor eating habits, poor sleeping habits, spending habits, multitasking, maybe smoking. Think about those, brain dump on like a notes on your computer, a sheet of paper, and then put in those top 2 in there. And to keep us company, I'm going to just turn on some music. So now, my top two bad habits are eating when stressed and over checking my phone. So this is eating when stressed. This is for me the most important because one of my goals this year, and as we're moving into October, we're moving into the last quarter of the year, is to lose weight. And another one of my goals is to finish my book. And so both of these things are very distracting because it keeps me from staying focused, from just getting into a distraction loop. And so snacking is when times when I have a project due or I'm just feeling a bit bored at work, I find myself going to the fridge or picking something up to eat as a form of distraction. And then with over checking my phone, studies find that the average person checks their email about their email every 15 minutes. And I'm definitely someone who is guilty of this. So I brain dumped a whole list of bad habits, but these are my top two because these are also things that were really important in stopping me from getting to where I wanted to be. So the next step is we are going to look at the reflecting and planning within the ERP method. So that second page within your fillable workbook is the ERP method. So the first thing we've brought awareness to the habit that you want to change. The next step is to reflect. So looking at when does the habit usually occur? What is it costing you? And then planning how to eliminate the trigger and what's the replacement activity. So I'm going to do this with you. These are my top two. The bad habit, snacking when I'm stressed or bored. First step, reflecting, right? When does this happen and what's the trigger? So it happens in between meetings, before a program launch. What's the cost on my life? So how is it impacting me? It's impacting me. I'm feeling sluggish. I'm feeling less focused. I'm gaining weight because I'm snacking because I'm either stressed or bored or feeling anxious. I'm not actually hungry. And what could remove the habit trigger? So this step goes into the planning phase. The planning phase is what can let it go. So placing snack items on the highest shelf so it's more difficult to reach, or heading to a coffee shop when I work. Give yourself some options here, but what could remove this trigger, right? What can remove the cue? Because if you figure that out, that's very key. And then what's the replacement activity? So we can't create a new habit. We can't break a habit without creating a new one. So we need something to replace it that will still give you the sense of comfort and connection and that same hit of dopamine. So for me, it's taking my dog on a walk. I love cleaning, so cleaning my room or listening to music. And then the purpose. The purpose is the emotional juice that is going to make that bad habit go away. So you want to think about, how is your future self going to feel after you practice changing the habit, right? So how are you going to feel in a week, in a year, in 10 years' time? And I'm using really empowering words here, which I encourage you to do as well. So for me, I'm going to feel more confident in my skin, healthy and more energetic, sexy, proud that I've broken the habit. Another example was over checking my phone, right? That's my second bad habit that I want to quit. When do I overcheck my phone? Before bed, when I wake up, in between meetings. The cost on my life, well, it's definitely costing productivity when I check my phone in between and I'm like within a task. It takes 15 minutes to set back up and stay focused in the task. So there's a 15-minute setup process. So it's definitely costing productivity, efficiency, presence, business, and personal growth. What can remove the habit trigger? So before bed, turning off the phone and placing it in the other room, or during a work day, put it on do not disturb and also put it in the other room. So you're not going to get this perfect every single time, and you're going to have temptations where you want to gravitate towards your phone or gravitate towards snacks, but it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just starting small. And a replacement activity is reading before bed, meditating, completing my morning routine, and then giving myself the space to check my phone. How will I feel? Strong and accomplished, intentional with my time, feeling like I'm growing. These are words that are meaningful to me. So go ahead and write out your ERT method. Right? A lot of this work, this webinar today is about you reflecting and starting to plan around some of these things. So I'm going to give us about 7 to 8 minutes to just plan this out. I'm going to accompany you with some music again. And I will see you guys in about 8 minutes. Okay, great. Now, you can use this method to also outline some of the other bad habits that you'd written out. What we want to do is we want to look at how to commit to breaking the habit. So the first step is to sync your stress levels. So your emotional state will have an impact on the bad habit. So now that you know when the trigger shows up, make sure that you carve out some time for self-care. So this could be as simple as just breathing, changing your body stance. I like to just get up from my desk, or I like to do like a power stance like this, a quick walk, or even journaling. Also be aware of the cause. So know why you've been undertaking this habit. Is it comfort? Is it boredom? Is it because of stress? So that you can replace the bad habit with a good one that will still give you that feel-good reward. And then start small. So this one is the most difficult for my clients who tend to be overachievers and a perfectionist. Your brain does better when it's a smaller step than a big leap. Remember that. Your brain does better when it's a smaller step than a big leap. And breaking a habit doesn't need to be an all or nothing state. So if you want to stop eating junk food, start with a little bit at a time and then start to wean off some more. Or exercising. 1 hour at the gym, maybe too much. Start with 5 minutes. It's a little trick that makes it more digestible for your brain to just make space for the new habit and break the old habit. Know your cues. It could be location, it could be time, it could be emotional state, it could be the people around you that causes the behavior to occur. And then remove triggers. So if you procrastinate, change your environment. If you check your phone too much, place it in another room or just turn it off. Have a better reason for quitting. So this comes back to purpose. So tap into how your future self will want you to feel. So for me, it's like, what is 10 years? What is, 10 years from now, how will I want to feel? Whether that's again in a week, a year, or 10 years, write down the type of person that you want to be and how you want to be feeling. And last but not least, be kind to yourself, right? Remember, you won't break that bad habit overnight. You won't even break it on day 15 or day 20. It takes an average of 66 days to break a habit. So be kind to yourself, even when you're not getting it done perfectly. So these are some resources that I needed to put in here for you guys, just some apps and books that I love. Again, remember, if you want to be part of the giveaway, you can just take a picture and tag at Sami Toussi, and I would gift you the book, The Power of Habits, one of my favorites, Atomic Habits and The One Thing. And here are some apps, which I love on focus and presence. There's Forest, App Detox. I'd be happy to send this over to the UCLA Alumni team, and they can send it to you too. So yeah, let's have a quick recap. We've gone through understanding the neuroscience behind habits, how to break those bad habits through the ERT method, and then committing to getting rid of those unhealthy behaviors through the 7 sticking success steps. So now you might be thinking, great, Sami, this was fantastic. So what? Like, I've gotten a really great information after 45 minutes. We have those take-home materials, but there's an old Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. But the second best time to plant that tree is now. So if you have gotten value over the last about 45 minutes that we've been together and through this workshop, I do encourage you to sign up for a complimentary consultation. This is a QR code, just like in a restaurant, where you can directly take a picture and it'll go to my calendar link, where you can see my schedule to really close out the last quarter of the year, super strong and with better habits. So now I want to give us ample space for some Q&A, and so I'm ready to move forward, Joseph, when you are.
Yeah, great. So if anyone has any questions for Sami, we're going to go through our Q&A at this moment. Sami, thank you so much for the session of just going through the workbook. We did have one question that was about the IRP sheet, and it was from Caesar. He asked if you could explain the difference between Plan P1 and Plan P2, that he keeps confusing the two. Can you just elaborate on those for him?
So Plan P1 is thinking about reflecting on how you can remove the habit trigger. So what's the trigger that's causing the habit to take place? So whether that's time, it's the location, it's a specific person, or it's just an emotional state that you're in. So planning how to remove that. And then planning P2 is how can you replace the old habit with a more supportive activity? So something like, I wrote out with snacking. Instead of snacking in between meetings, I can take my dog on a walk, I can clean, I can listen to music, something that's supporting.
Great, thank you, Caesar. I hope that helped you clarify the two. I had another question, not from the audience, but just for myself. You shared the ERP method as a resource to break a bad habit, which is great. It's a reflection process. It's a way to create a plan. Do you have advice on ways to keep oneself accountable?
Yeah. So I love the app Habitica. That's definitely a great tech resource to hold yourself accountable. I also recommend connecting with a friend or like finding an accountability buddy to just check in daily with how much you're progressing within creating the new habit or breaking the old one. Also rewarding yourself is key. So you're not ever going to get it within, it takes 66 days on average to create a new habit. And so if you mess up, it's okay. But when you do, celebrate and reward, take yourself out to ice cream or go out for a glass of wine, reward just sticking to those new habits too. And write out your wins if you can daily.
Yes, I agree with that. Another question I have is, what tips do you have for someone who, fell off the wagon or just weren't so happy with their journey to breaking this bad habit?
So I think coming back to being kind to yourself, showing yourself compassion and understanding that every moment is anew, and rather than focusing on what had happened in the past, just focusing on the present and the action that they can take in the moment. That's what I would recommend. And to just, when you're coming back to it, just start small, a little bit at a time as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
We have a question from the audience from Will Baker. His question was, have you noticed any particularly helpful strategies to help people wake up early consistently? I set my alarm, move it around, yet I always seem to find an excuse to avoid waking up early. I feel like this is a worldwide issue.
My question to Will is, what time are you going to bed? Because waking up early starts with going to bed early. So that's one. So it full answers. And if you're getting enough sleep, and the question is, how do I get up out of bed? I think there's a great book by Mel Robbins called The 5-Second Rule, where you do a countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you just jump out of bed. I also recommend creating, like having a glass of water next to you and like chugging the water, and having, you can have it stack. So for example, your alarm goes off, and then a new behavior could be just like pushing yourself up out of bed, or maybe you have like a glass of water and you drink it, and that's the cue to get out of bed instead of the alarm, because with the alarm you've gotten into a behavior of turning it off. So what's a new cue, which you can enact a new behavior there too.
Nice, thank you for those tips. Will, I hope that was helpful for you. Another question we have from an anonymous attendee, which is, I think is a great question. And it's, you talked about breaking bad habits. What is your advice for starting a new habit?
So with starting a new habit, it's just, I think one of the best advices I've gotten is, there's a book called Atomic Habits, which I also love. And it talks about starting, like using a habit that already comes regularly, like brushing your teeth or having breakfast, and then connecting that with a new habit. So it's habit stacking is what it's called. So if you, for example, you brush your teeth and then you want to go exercise, that brushing your teeth equals then moving into exercise. So you have that cue, which creates a new behavior.
Great. Well, we're definitely going to get the names of the books that you're referencing and share them out to our attendees.
I am great. Yes.
Another question we have is from Maria. She asked, procrastination is my bad habit. What are some replacement activities that you would suggest?
Yeah. So with procrastination, it's most people procrastinate out of fear. So I would want to understand, it's not because you're lazy, but maybe it's something that you're fearing. So I like to use like a 5-minute rule. So if it's, for example, procrastinating from writing a paper, procrastinating from doing a project, just sitting at my computer for 5 minutes and just seeing what comes up. Also, changing environment is really helpful too. Getting out of your house. I know a lot of us are working from home, so like going to a coffee shop and getting rid of any distractions out there. Also turning off your phone or putting it on do not disturb. There's also an app that's called Forest, which I love. It's a productivity app. It's like you plant a tree within 25 minutes. If you touch your phone, the tree dies. It's a virtual tree. But just ways to keep up with, letting go of procrastination and actually focusing too.
Great, thank you for that advice. Another question we have, which I feel is also a common feeling these days, it's from an anonymous attendee, and it is around anxiety. What if the trigger is anxiety? How do you remove that trigger and create a ERP plan to, go through the ERP method with that sort of trigger?
So with anxiety, I would say helpful tips are movement. So going on a walk, doing yoga, practicing just breathing, quickly journaling what's coming up for you. And, if you don't have too much time, just like a very quick downward dog or a step outside for fresh air, just quick notes on like what you're feeling in the moment. And reality checking is really helpful too, like trying to understand where is the anxiety coming from, and what's the reality of the situation.
Mhm. Great. Yeah, I totally think that sometimes putting yourself into a calm space really helps to bring more
Yeah.
clarity. So thank you for sharing that. I know anxiety is a huge topic, so thank you for sharing just your, I guess, personal suggestions on that. Another question we have, well, it's more of an ask. Can I see the slide about successful ways to break habits, multiple arrows in a column? That's from an
Yes.
anonymous attendee. I think that was great. Thank you so much. We'll just leave that there for a little bit so that they can maybe take notes or take a photo of that. Another attendee asked, will the PowerPoint slides be shared out with them? Wanted to ask if that would be an option, or you suggest that they reach out to you via a complimentary session.
Yeah, I'd say reach out. I'm happy to share the slides on the resources.
Great.
Definitely.
Hopefully Maria got that answer. Great. And then I think we can go ahead. If anyone has any other questions, please throw them into the Q&A. For Sami, we have a bit of time. Looking over the ones we have left, there's one from an anonymous attendee. Where can I find more information about how long it takes to break a negative thought loop? Mine has been reinforced for several years. Do you know what are the neuroplasticities behind this? That's a little,
The question is how to break a negative thought loop.
yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely recommend. So, worrying is also a habit.
Mhm.
So, learning about first of all, what's causing the worry. I think one tool I really like using, which I've used with my clients, is called reframe evidence, and it's just part of cognitive behavioral therapy. You look at what's the automatic thought that's coming up for you. So the initial negative thoughts. What is the reframe thought that you can think about? And then what's the evidence, like true data, evidence, just thinking about past experience that makes the reframe true. That's one tool that I do recommend.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
The question comes from Jeanette, and it is, what do you think of people that think of habits as the type of person they are? What if I stop being a person that eats too much? What if I stop claiming I am a person that eats too much, and I start claiming I am the type of person that does not eat too much? Basically, think of myself a different type of person and stop being cold turkey.
So, from what I'm hearing, Jeanette is asking, what if you stop identifying as a person who eats too much? I think that's a great idea because, again, every moment is anew and you don't have to be that person that eats too much. You can choose a new behavior. So, yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think it'll also just help you remove yourself from the behavior and potentially any triggers that are coming up too.
Great, and then I'll go ahead and answer one last question.
Okay.
I can relate to this question so much. Do you have any advice for compulsive physical habits like nail biting or skin picking? How does one find a replacement? I would probably say the nail polish.
Yeah, that's a great one. I also see finding something else to do with your hands because it sounds like whether it's like a stress ball or
Mhm.
the nail polish is a great idea. What do you use?
Yeah, it's this nail polish that someone recommended. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but it just has a nasty taste in my mouth. So then that's a trigger to me that to remove my fingers from my mouth. I will say that because of the pandemic, just as much as we touch, that's just been a natural like thought in my mind is like, there's so much
Mhm.
bacteria on everything, and it only is a better habit. It would be great of a habit to not have because I don't want to get sick. And so I think the
Yeah.
mentality of this global pandemic has helped. But
Yes.
before I would do
Yes.
it without thinking, right? So, and I would do it on when I'm sad, happy, anxious, hungry. Like there wasn't one particular cause, but
Mhm.
it's gotten better, but it's definitely, I have my moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even like putting hand sanitizer on your fingernails, I think that would be, you would definitely not want to bite your nails with that.
Yeah. Well, great. That was our last question that we're going to be taking today. If you did want to connect with Sami, please reach out via the QR code that she sent out. I'll also send a follow-up email with a link to the QR code as well, if that is helpful for you. But everyone join me in thanking Sami for being here today. We really, really appreciate your insights and your, professionalism and just um, helping us kick bad habits. So thank you.
Of
Before we
course.
can, yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was just going to play the song Bad Habits. Go on.
Before we conclude, I'd just like to encourage you to complete the follow-up survey that you will receive once the webinar ends. It'll pop up on your screen once you click end today or leave webinar. We will also throw into the chat a link to RSVP for our next Career Coaches webinar, How to Avoid Burnout, on Thursday, October 13th at noon. So register today if you haven't done so already and save the date. And so with that, thank you for joining us, and go Bruins.
Awesome. Go Bruins. Bye, Joseph. Bye,
Everyone.
everyone. Thank you.